Welcome back. Job stats released today suggest more pain is coming for South Africans of working age. There was very little movement in terms of jobs in the formal sector between the first quarter of the year and the second quarter. However, the Stats SA's quarterly employment survey shows that 161,000 jobs were shed between April and June compared to the same period last year. That's a decline of 1.8%. The sectors worst hit included construction and government employment. The data also shows no let-up in the number of jobs being lost in the mining and manufacturing sectors. The decline in public sector employment could be indicative of government's plan to rein in its budget deficit. This is one of the key metrics watched by international credit rating agencies. Well, we're joined now by Mike Schussler. He's with economist.co.za. Great to have you with us.
Thank you, Francis.
So is there any consolation here? Our economy actually contracted in the second quarter. Any consolation that these figures weren't worse?
Well, I expected them to be very much worse. First of all, let's just say the government sector. We knew that that was going to be a decline because the elections last year, if you remember, we had the national elections, and ultimately we employed over 120,000 people to run those elections. And it's all temporary jobs. So they are formal sector jobs, but when they go, they go. So certainly, you know, a large part of the decline is a really, let's call it a 5-year type of thing that happens every 5 years with elections. We're probably going to see less of that going forward.
Is it just that, Mike, or because
it is mainly that?
A lot of people say we need a slimmer government. We shouldn't have this bulging
No.
public
We had
sector.
the government decline already in the third quarter of last year, the same amount of decline. We actually now had a government increase of about 4,000 jobs in the last quarter. So what we're seeing is a very stable job market, surprisingly stable, because we knew those jobs were out. The industries that keep on getting hit are obviously our manufacturing and our construction. I expected worse in mining, but if you look at the quarter on quarter, it's exactly the same number of people employed in mining in the first and the second quarter, and we saw a similar number last year. We only had a 1,000 people declined. But we know that worse is coming because we know at the CCMA there's applications for restructuring, if you wish, and so on, retrenchments of over 20,000 people in that sector alone. So that's probably going to hit us in the third and the fourth quarter. I can't see it just coming in one quarter. And we're probably going to get a similar amount from the steel sector in broader terms in the manufacturing, which falls under manufacturing. So that's where we're worried about. I was very surprised that we only had 1,000 job losses between the first and the second quarter, and we know that there was only about 20,000, 24,000 jobs that were lost outside of the people that were involved in the elections last year.
What you're saying echoes what the National Union of Mine Workers is saying, that the number of expected job losses in mining has in fact doubled, because originally we were saying 11,000, now over 20,000, and that's despite this deal to save jobs. When you see news like yesterday, Glencore being punished on the markets, is that prospect of saving jobs just becoming dimmer and dimmer?
Well, I think if we look at the last big recession that we had in 2009, we lost 1.2 million jobs in a period of about 2 years in the total South Africa, not just in the formal sector. And about 1 out of every 12 jobs in the formal sector was affected. So this decline that we had last quarter, I expected a lot more of a jobs bloodbath. We did not get that. But that's not going to say it's not going to come. And it looks like this time business, at least, and labour are talking and finding ways to minimize the job losses. There will still be job losses. But it does seem that they're delaying the job losses in the hope of commodity prices picking up in the mining sector, in the hope of demand picking up in the manufacturing sector. Obviously, the construction sector, where profit margins are much tighter and lower, that destruction has already started, unfortunately. But I think we're going to see a lot more this quarter and next quarter, we must remember this is 3 months old, this information, and we've moved on since then.
We're not talking about the unemployment figure
No.
now that's been stuck around 25. That's a different survey. But how do you expect what we're seeing here, only looking at formal sector jobs, to feed into unemployment rate?
Well, obviously, if the formal sector starts getting hit, it has a knock-on effect into the informal sector. And also when people are not secure, they may say, well, I'm not going to use a domestic worker anymore, which is also part of the other job numbers. So it's very likely that the unemployment numbers go up. But the unemployment is a definitional thing. So we've got to look at the broader unemployment picture. And that has remained very sticky between 34 and 36% for approximately 7 years now. But it's very likely now that we're going to see that move closer to 36 and probably maybe even break out of that. But it won't happen in this year, I think. I think we're probably going to see that take a bit of time. But certainly the formal sector is where people get good pay. And that's the other thing that people keep forgetting of this survey. We saw a 7.3% increase in people's pay, the people that kept their jobs in the formal sector, which is higher than inflation. So the economy is doing well on the retail side because people are getting paid in the formal sector and they're getting paid relatively well. So those of us who have jobs are relatively okay. We feel insecure perhaps, but other factors that we discussed earlier like crime and all those things do affect us. But at this moment in time, I think the big thing is we all know and expect that jobs are going to come under a lot of pressure, and it was quite surprising that it didn't come through in the second quarter.
A philosophical question. Are we perhaps pushing the decent jobs too much? Like you say, if you're in the formal sector, earning a good wage, you're doing okay. But if something doesn't change, so many people are leaving, then they'll go to the informal sector. And that's what you're talking about. More people basically sitting on the side of the road trying to eke out almost a subsistence living.
Yeah, you know, if we look at our informal sector, it's relatively small. And the last time we have data from where we can compare it around the world is around 2012, I think. And we had 85% of our people in South Africa, including the informal sector and domestic workers, getting a regular salary. The world average is far below that. It is roughly about 60%, including developed countries. And for example, we've got more people that are employed that get a regular salary than the UK, than most European countries. It is a very, very strange thing. But at the other end, we have one of the highest unemployment rates. So perhaps we should first look, and I think the leadership of the ANC has said so on different parts, has said, first we need a job, then we can look at it becoming a decent job.
All right, thank you so much for your time. Mike Schussler from economist.co.za. More news.